and he is not following me back. But that's okay. Nobody follows me back anyways. Nobody likes me. So you want to become an art god? Well, you're in the right place today because we're talking about an art god who goes by the name of Guweiz. There are a couple things that he does really well in his paintings that I think we can all take notes from. So today in this video, I want to expose his secrets for you guys, and hopefully we can all learn something new. And by the end of this video, we're all going to become art gods. 10 out of 10, money back. So let's take a look at his Instagram profile. Okay, he is at 998,000 subscribers. 998,000 followers. So if you like his work, go give him a follow. Let's get him to 1 million. So I'm just gonna quickly scroll down his profile here, and you can see just by looking at everything from a glance that he's got this very dark and gloomy kind of vibe to a lot of his paintings. And there's also some very interesting lighting scenarios. Now, the secret behind creating this kind of visual identity for himself is his use of values. And that's what we're gonna talk about in this video today. This is something that's super fundamental that I think everybody can implement into their paintings. So the key theme here is values. And there are 2 points that I wanna talk about. Number one is value range. So to take a look at the values that he uses in different parts of this composition, I'm going to use the eyedropper tool here, and I'm going to just swipe my way across the painting. But keep your eye on this little circle guy here on our color palette. I'm going to start from the top, and you can see just how dark these values are. In certain areas, you're almost getting pure blacks, which, you know, is something that I've been told never to do. So that's everything in the foreground. And if we go on to the character, you can see the same kind of trend start to happen. Even on the very light areas on the skin, we're staying within the bottom half of the color palette, which is going to be obviously the darker half. So this is one thing that Guweiz does really well in his work. He's able to control the range of values that he uses for each individual subject. So you get this foreground that is very dark. It's staying below the halfway line of that color palette. But as we move on to the background here, if you keep your eye on that little dot, you see it's bouncing around in the middle of the color palette now. It's moving up a little bit more. Even the darkest areas in that background is not going towards the pure blacks. You can see there's a very controlled range of values that you find behind our foreground. So what's happening here is he's using a different set of values for the background in this painting. This is a very fundamental concept. You know, there are different value ranges for different subjects in the environment. For example, things that are far away, there's a lot of atmospheric depth. So you're gonna get something that has a little bit less contrast. And even looking at this painting right here, you can see everything closer to us in the foreground is much darker. But as we move to things in the background, you can see that the value range changes to be in the middle. Now for me, I find this really interesting because whenever I'm painting, I like to go within the top half of that color palette. And then when I have to do like ambient occlusion or a really, really dark shadow, I would move down to the bottom half. But I usually wouldn't cross this line right here because I don't want to get too close to pure black. But Guweiz is very bold with his dark colors, and he is very comfortable working inside this very dark range on the color palette, which is something that I'm not super comfortable with. The second thing that I think he does really well is the way he frames his compositions. This also has to do with values. So for example, if we take a look at this piece right here, you can see that the character is mostly dark. You've got black hair, black clothing, black leggings, and black shoes. But to contrast this with the background, he put in this very bright fridge that kind of frames the outline of the character, so you get a very strong silhouette. Even from a distance, you can tell what is happening in the piece. And here we have a second example that is really similar to what I just showed you guys. You can see the dark silhouette of the character is being really accentuated by the light behind her. Even for this one, you can see in cases like these, that window being there behind the face of the character is not an accident. That is a strategic placement of a lighter element behind something that is very dark, so that the dark element in front really pops out of that background. And there's some other pieces where this is a little bit more subtle, but still very much present. You can see in this piece right here, you've got a dark frame of the doorway and the character being much darker than that of the background. So right behind this doorway, you've got this lighter grayish, bluish kind of hue that really contrasts against the warmer colors of the character as well as the much darker value. So he's really using these different value groups to separate things from the foreground and the background without omitting any details. You can see that the background is extremely detailed in a lot of his paintings, but the way he separates them from the foreground is not through detail, but through values. Even this piece right here, you know, some of this is extremely subtle, but you can see that the background is mostly gray behind the hat, and then as you get down here, there's a light spot right behind the hand, so that silhouette creates a lot of contrast there. And if I slide to the other side of the painting, you can see the exact same thing start to happen, where there is a bright spot right behind the dark silhouette of that hand. This is all placed there very strategically, okay? None of this is accidental. Same thing here. Look at the darkness of the foreground and the framing using that brightness in the background. This is another very fundamental aspect of using values in your paintings. If you have a subject, a character in the foreground, you generally want them to kind of stand out against the background in terms of their values. So if you have a darker character, you want to put them against a light background. If you have a light character, you want to put them against a dark background. Contrast. Coming back to our examples, you can see even in these very complex scenes, he creates a great sense of separation between the foreground and the background. So the foreground would be this platform and our character, while the background would be these building structures. The values on the character are much darker than the values that you find in the background. Coming to this piece, you can see the exact same thing. Now he made sure that this pole, which is a little bit darker than the rest of the background, did not intersect with the outline of the character because he wanted to create this crisp silhouette against the lighter background. This is all very strategic. Big brain. You got to use that coconut. And here's a simpler composition, but he's doing the same thing here, okay? Look, this building is much darker in value than the sky behind it. Now, what did he do here? He ended the buildings right before they could intersect with the character. You can see that creates just a little bit more contrast than if the character were to be backdropped by a building. You can see what he's doing here. He's trying to create a lot of contrast, atmospheric depth, and in the process of doing so, he created a painting that is very visually interesting to look at. Okay, so now that we've revealed Guweiz's secrets, I want to try to put this stuff into practice. I want to see if I can try to make a painting that is dark and still readable and still effective. So we're going to try to paint this scene on a plane. Now I'm just going to keep in mind the extremely dark values that he used in his paintings, and I'm going to try to replicate the same kind of feeling. This is going to be very hard for me because I like to work within that top half of the color palette. I like to make my paintings very bright, very vibrant. So this is going to be difficult. I mean, I don't know. This doesn't look right to me. I can't see anything. I'm really going against all of my instincts to try to replicate his style. So I noticed that he has a lot of very soft blending on the skin of his characters. You know what I like about this so far is everything is so dark. I feel like you can't even see my mistakes. So remember what we said about values, right? I want to make the character stand out against the background. I want to create high contrast between the background and the main focal point. It's been about 20 minutes, you know, I think it's working. It's coming along. I feel like I'm really stepping out of my usual comfort zone here with the colors I'm using and with the values that I'm using. You know, I'm actually finding this all pretty challenging because the color ranges, we're working within such a small, confined part of our color palette. It's really hard to make things stand out from one another. And picking the right colors in this instance is an absolute nightmare. To be honest, I still find myself instinctually wanting to go back to the very bright color range, but I have to like force myself not to. Okay, fast forward a little bit, there is my study based on the style of Guweiz. Pretty happy with this. You know, I feel like this really kind of took me out of my comfort zone. It was a good challenge for me because I usually like to work within the brighter areas on the color palette, and this really forced me to work within the darks, which I'm completely uncomfortable with, but that was pretty fun. There you go, guys. I mean, if you're trying to study other people's work, be sure to put some of the things into practice. Don't just think it in your head. You gotta do. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to talk about these very fundamental concepts that Guweiz uses in his work really well, and I think it's something that we could all try to implement into our work, you know, controlling the range of our values and adding that contrast between the background and our subjects. There you go, guys. More things we were able to observe from an art god, and now we can also become art gods. But I hope this video was helpful for you guys to highlight some of the things that I think were really interesting in Guweiz's work. And if you want to see more digital art content like this, feel free to subscribe to my channel. And if you guys like Guweiz's work, go give him a follow. He's almost at 1 million. And he is not following me back. But that's okay. Nobody follows me back anyways. Nobody likes me. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys on the next video. Dude, so hot in my room. Where is the air conditioning? I've been sweating.